Hello, my name is Alexander Nietzsche. I am a current grad student at the University of Denver. I am in the Master's Marketing program, and the session I attended today was the keynote speaker, Sue Bird and Jessica Robertson, in conversation about the investment and growth of women's sport. This panel was hosted by Justine Brown, and it featured Sue Bird and Jessica Robertson, both who were big in women's sports and actually both worked together at Together, which I'll get into later. So this session the speakers were talking a lot about how different it is playing in women's sport versus how kind of men's sport usually is, and how there's a lot of opportunities. It's not really shown. A lot of the athletes feel like they don't really have a voice or able to be seen or able to come together for different opportunities to be able to have more coverage and representation. So that's why a lot of different women came together to create this company called Together. Together is a company that was created by Alex Morgan, Chloe Kim, Simone Manuel, and Sue Bird. It's a media and commerce company for female athletes, so they can come together and actually have something to be able to promote and go forward, because they didn't feel like they had enough. And honestly, to me, that's a failing within the brand for women's sports, because if they're not even giving themselves the chance to grow, to actually find an audience, because they were talking about how it would be so difficult to find games or even like recommend for people to watch because, oh, it's not included on this, or, oh, there's no breakdown after. It's not given really any of the same respect or grandiose that male sports is. And so they went on to talk about how this company they created has really been able to be successful and grow because they've created a community not just for different stars, but for their fans who actually feel represented, able to be seen a little more, and actually are able to invest in something that's their own. So it's able to grow pretty well. And they even talked about how different brands were actually very on board to promote Together, but very few were actually willing to take the step that Together had to promote more of these women's sports. So that's one thing they were talking about, how it's unfortunate that other brands weren't willing to do this, but they were still happy to at least get the support and start making that kind of cultural change. Now, this is a relatively new brand. They were founded in 2021, but especially since they were able to launch, and there's also been a lot of changes in culture within sports. Like, for example, the WNBA, where before it was kind of plateauing before 2020, which is kind of what they said themselves during the panel. It's now this huge phenomenon. WNBA games are now breaking records. They're able to see a lot more. It's actually able to have a following and be given the attention that it needs to grow. And because of this, these speakers felt like their brand was able to grow more, and by extension, kind of they were together able to keep elevating each other. They also gave social media a big props for it, because they're able to actually post their own content, and it's not going to be kind of almost censored in the same way, where it's not given coverage, versus it's just they are stars, they're able to post, they're able to get things out there so that they're able to not have to rely on the typical media channel. They also talked about how men's sports, because it's already been here, it's been the thing, NBA, NFL, NHL, all these different things have already been in the industry, in the market for years, and they kind of talked about how it's almost has no room to grow. While the women's sports are now actually finally able to grow, they're getting more coverage, they're getting more fans, they're able to actually get more income. So they're talking about how it's exciting that for once the female market actually has more potential from the male market from their point of view, and they actually think it'll get more people and more women specifically into sports so this industry can continue to grow. They also credited Title IX and how they are able to grow, because it required equal treatment for both the men's and women's team. So suddenly you have just as many teams and just as much coverage to have. And with the NIL restrictions being lifted back in 2021, suddenly you now have potential college stars who are there. We're able to grow, actually build a following before they even can get to the professional level, and then elevate and already come into this, further expanding the industry and bringing a lot of the fans that they had already developed with them in this example. Overall, I found the session very informative, and as a marketer, I was definitely able to see a lot of the issues from that perspective, especially when it comes to like advertising, how they promoted things, and also brand experience. Because with it, women's sports, that whole experience in itself just wasn't really cared for or given any the right time, effort, or attention to grow. And once they actually realized that, and there was such a conscious effort to do something, suddenly you're able to see this growth and this improvement. And now you have a bunch of different new brands and new companies like Together, and just a lot more opportunities for women in sports because they were able to start this company and start making these changes and go through with these things. And now, as this market grows and we get to see more women's team, we get to see how they expand, how they be, if they actually are going to get up and be talked about in the media the same as men's team. It's really exciting to actually see how it'll grow, and honestly how to see what kind of advertising they do now that they know they have this kind of untapped market available.